Everybody Loves Raymond was one of those rare shows that felt less like a TV program and more like a visit to your own family's living room. The arguments, the food, the guilt trips, the love, all of it was so real that millions of people tuned in every single week just to feel a little less alone in their own family chaos. For 9 seasons, the Barone family made us laugh, made us cringe, and honestly, made us feel better about our own weird relatives. So when the show finally ended, and when certain faces started disappearing from our screens, people had questions. Why did they go? What really happened behind the scenes? Was it drama? Was it something personal? Today, we're going to answer all of that. These are the real reasons why some of the most beloved actors from Everybody Loves Raymond walked away. And some of the answers might genuinely surprise you. Let's start with someone who played one of the most iconic TV moms of all time. Marie Barone was the kind of mother who cooked you dinner, told you how to live your life, rearranged your furniture without asking, and somehow made you feel guilty for breathing the wrong way. She was controlling, dramatic, and completely impossible to ignore, and she was absolutely perfect. The woman behind Marie was Doris Roberts, and she brought that character to life in a way that very few actors could have pulled off. She made Marie annoying and lovable at the exact same time, which is honestly a really hard thing to do. Now, here is something important to understand right away. Doris Roberts did not leave Everybody Loves Raymond because of any kind of falling out or drama. She was there from the very first episode to the very last one. The show ended in 2005 because the people in charge made a smart decision. They chose to wrap things up while the show was still great, rather than drag it out until people got tired of it. Doris was fully on board with that decision. She respected it. After spending nearly a decade playing the same character, she understood that some things are better when they end at the right time. But after the show ended, a lot of fans expected to see her pop up in another big TV role pretty quickly. That never really happened, and there is a good reason for that. Doris Roberts was incredibly selective. She had spent 9 long years giving everything she had to one role, and she was not about to jump into just any project that came her way. She had no interest in playing a stereotypical grandmother or another meddling mother-in-law just for the sake of staying on television. She had real range, real talent, and she wanted her next move to actually mean something. So instead of chasing TV deals, she went back to something she had always loved, the stage. Before she ever became famous on television, Doris had a long history in theater, and after Raymond, she returned to that world with a lot of energy and passion. She also started writing more, and she published a memoir where she opened up about her life, her career, and her time on the show. On top of all that, she became a strong voice for older actors in Hollywood. She spoke out loudly about ageism in the entertainment industry, which was something she had experienced personally. She wanted people to understand that actors do not lose their value just because they get older. She did appear on a few shows here and there, but she never committed to another major long-running role. For Doris, the truth was simple. After creating something as iconic as Marie Barone, very little else could measure up. She knew what she had built, she was proud of it, and she was not willing to settle for something lesser. She passed away in 2016, and when she did, the world felt the loss of not just a great actress, but a genuinely fearless woman who always did things on her own terms. Now let's talk about someone whose story is a little different and honestly a lot more emotional. Frank Barone was the grumpy, sarcastic, lovably rude father who said whatever was on his mind and somehow got away with it every single time. He was played by Peter Boyle, and Peter did not just play that role. He owned it completely. Every line he delivered, every deadpan look he gave the camera, every ridiculous complaint about his food or his sons, it was gold. Pure gold. And here is the thing about Peter Boyle. He was there for the entire run of the show. He did not leave. He did not quit. He stayed until the very last episode. But fans who paid close attention noticed something in the later seasons. Frank seemed to have fewer scenes. He was in the background more often, and he did not have quite as much to do as he used to. People started to wonder why. Was it something behind the scenes? Did he want a smaller role? The truth, it turns out, is that Peter Boyle had been dealing with serious health problems for a long time, far longer than most people knew. He had suffered a heart attack before. He had battled cancer. He had also had a stroke. These were not minor issues. These were real, life-altering conditions that most people would have used as a reason to step back entirely. But Peter never did that. He kept showing up to work. He kept learning his lines. He kept delivering performances that made people laugh out loud. Even when he was not feeling his best, the moment those cameras started rolling, he gave everything he had. The people who work with him have talked about what a professional he was, how he kept everyone around him laughing between takes, how warm and funny he was when the cameras were off, and how seriously he took his job even when his body was making it hard for him. That kind of dedication is rare. That kind of love for the work is something most people never fully experience. When the show ended in 2005, it was a proper, dignified farewell. No drama. No controversy. Just a beloved show going out with all of its people still standing together. Peter Boyle was part of that. He got to say goodbye the right way. Sadly, just over a year after the final episode aired, Peter passed away from multiple myeloma and heart disease. He was 71 years old. The entire cast came together for his funeral, and the people who knew him best have said that working on Everybody Loves Raymond was one of the greatest experiences of their lives, and a big part of that was because of Peter. He may not be here anymore, but Frank Barone is never going away. Let's shift gears now and talk about the kids on the show, starting with the oldest Barone child, Ally. She was played by Madyline Sweeten, who started on the show when she was just 5 years old. 5. By the time everything wrapped up, she was a teenager. Almost her entire childhood happened on that set, surrounded by cameras, producers, and some of the most talented comedic actors in the business. From the outside, that probably sounds like the coolest childhood imaginable. But the reality of growing up that way is a lot more complicated than it looks. When the show ended, Madyline did not immediately go after another big role. She stepped back. She took time away from the spotlight, which honestly is a pretty brave and unusual thing for a young actress to do in an industry that is always pushing people to stay visible. But she had a real reason for it. Being famous from such a young age had come with a lot of pressure. Pressure to always look a certain way, act a certain way, and be the person that the public thought she was rather than who she actually was. After the show ended, she needed space to figure out who Madyline really was, separate from Ally Barone and separate from Hollywood. She stepped away, focused on her personal life, worked on her mental health, and gave herself permission to just be a normal young adult for a while. Eventually, she found her way back to acting, but she did it quietly, through independent films and voice work, projects that gave her creative freedom without putting her back in the middle of a giant spotlight. She was not chasing fame. She was chasing something more honest than that, a life that actually felt like hers. And honestly, you cannot help but respect that. Now we come to perhaps the most heartbreaking part of this entire story. Jeffrey and Michael Barone, those adorable twin boys on the show, were played by real-life twins Sawyer and Sullivan Sweeten, who are Madyline's younger brothers. They were cast on the show when they were just 16 months old. 16 months. They literally grew up in front of the camera, and by the time the show ended they were around 10 years old. When the show wrapped, the family made a decision together to leave Hollywood behind and return to a more normal life in Texas. They wanted the boys to go to school, make regular friends, and grow up like regular kids. That decision came from a place of love, and it made complete sense. But the transition from being a child on a famous TV show to just being a regular kid in a classroom is not as smooth as it sounds. That kind of sudden shift, going from being recognized everywhere to being nobody in particular, can hit really hard, especially for a young person who has never known anything else. For Sawyer, that adjustment was especially painful. He struggled with depression and found it difficult to find his footing in a world that looked nothing like the one he had grown up in. In 2015, at only 19 years old, Sawyer passed away. His death sent shockwaves through the fan community and brought an important and often ignored conversation back to the surface. The very real mental health struggles that so many child actors face once the cameras stop rolling. Sullivan, his twin, has stayed mostly out of the public eye since then. He has spoken a little about his brother and their shared experience, but for the most part he has chosen to live quietly, away from the industry that shaped his earliest years. After everything their family went through, that choice is completely understandable. Their story is a reminder that behind every performance, no matter how small or how young the actor, there is a real human being with real feelings navigating a world that most of us will never fully understand. On a lighter note, let's talk about someone whose exit from the show was about as low drama as it gets. Chris Elliott played Peter McDougal, Amy Strange's socially awkward older brother, and every single time he appeared on screen he brought this wonderfully weird energy that fans absolutely loved. He did not show up that often, but when he did, people paid attention. Then he just kind of stopped appearing, and fans wanted to know what happened. The answer is honestly pretty simple. There was no drama, no argument, no creative tension. Chris Elliott left because he was busy. He has always been the kind of performer who keeps a lot of plates spinning at once. Writing, acting, doing comedy in various forms. Everybody Loves Raymond was a fun gig for him, but it was never his main project. When scheduling made it harder to come back, he moved on to other things. His time on the show was short, but it was memorable, and the character he created in those few appearances stuck with fans long after he stopped showing up. And finally, let's talk about Katherine Helmond, who played Lois Whalen, Deborah's elegant, slightly snobbish mother. She was not in a huge number of episodes, but every single time she appeared, she made an impression. Her scenes had this wonderful energy to them, and fans definitely noticed when she started showing up less and less. But here too, the real story is refreshingly simple. By the time she joined Everybody Loves Raymond, Katherine Helmond already had a long and successful career behind her. She had done so many great things in television, most famously in shows like Soap and Who's the Boss, and she had reached a point in her life where she was not looking to work full-time anymore. She was semi-retired. She appeared on Raymond because she enjoyed it, not because she needed the work. The demanding schedule of a regular TV show just did not fit the kind of life she wanted to be living at that stage. The show's creators completely understood that and were simply grateful to have her whenever she was available. She did not leave because anything went wrong. She left because she had earned the right to do things on her own terms. What makes Everybody Loves Raymond so special, even all these years later, is that it was built on something real. Real family tension, real love, real arguments about stupid things that somehow also mean everything. The actors who brought that world to life were not just doing a job. They genuinely cared about the show, about the characters, and about each other. And when it was over, each one of them moved forward in a way that made sense for who they were as a person. Some stepped back from the spotlight completely. Some pushed forward into other creative work. Some never got the chance to see what came next. But all of them left behind something lasting. A show that still makes people laugh, still makes people feel seen, and still reminds us that even the most frustrating family in the world is worth holding on to. That is the legacy of Everybody Loves Raymond, and no amount of time is going to change that.